What is going on, guys? It is Wrestlelamia here, back with another video. It's time for TLC, the WWE's latest pay-per-view of 2020. With 3 World Championships on the line, 2 tag titles at stake, and a Firefly Inferno match to boot, is it going to be a hot time in the Thunderdome? Join us now as Wrestlelamia looks at the 2020 edition of TLC, recapping the matches and analysing the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. Firstly, we start off with the pre-show, as the 24/7 champion R-Truth shows up to talk with tonight's pre-show panel and offers his tag team experience to Asuka, as fans know is looking for a tag partner after Lana's storyline injury. R-Truth reminds everyone he's the most decorated champion in the WWE, which is true, but will Asuka choose R-Truth to help her in her quest for the Women's Tag Team Championship? Well, we'll have to see. The only pre-show match is the 8-man tag team match between Daniel Bryan, Otis, Chad Gable and Biggie versus Shinsuke Nakamura, King Corbin with the Knights of the Lone Wolf, Cesaro and Sami Zayn. It's a short match that showcases all 8 stars and sees Biggie land the big end on Zayn for the win. Here are your winners, Bryan, Otis, Gable and Biggie. Now let's get into the main show, as the show actually starts off with the TLC Championship match between champion Drew McIntyre versus the phenomenal AJ Styles, who's with Almost. AJ Styles targets the champion's knee, a great strategy for a match where you have to climb a ladder to win. We always love when in-ring psychology is used. AJ's bodyguard Almost stands ominously at ringside but doesn't attack Drew even though the match is no DQ. Drew and AJ beat each other senseless, and the ever-opportunistic Miz comes out and cashes his Money in the Bank briefcase, making this officially a triple threat match. What looks like an easy win goes south as Almost enters the ring and throws the Miz out like a baby, crashing through a table. John Morrison attacks Almost with a steel chair to no effect. The hell was that chair made of? Glass? And Morrison heads for the back while Almost chases him. Despite the carnage, all 3 men recover and climb towards the top. However, Drew is able to fight off the Miz and Styles, retaining his title. The Miz fails to cash in his Money in the Bank briefcase, but Drew McIntyre retains the WWE Championship. Next up is the SmackDown Women's Championship match as champion Sasha Banks takes on Carmella. Carmella gets the upper hand thanks to some outside interference from her sommelier Reginald, and there's a series of near falls and Carmella escapes a Banks statement thanks to an assist from Reginald. However, after Banks takes Reginald out of the match with a Meteora, she locks Carmella in the Banks statement and gets the submission. Sasha Banks retains the SmackDown Women's Championship. Next, it's tag team action as it's the Raw Tag Team Championship match as champions The New Day take on the Hurt Business. Now, The New Day take the battle to the Hurt Business, but all it takes is one opportunity for veteran Shelton Benjamin to get the upper hand and the Hurt Business take over, isolating Xavier Woods. Woods makes the hot tag and Kingston goes into action, but the Hurt Business are at the top of their game tonight, and after knocking Xavier Woods out of the ring, the Dreadlock Dynamo is on his own. There's a superplex from Shelton followed by a lumbercheck from Cedric, and Alexander covers Kofi for the win. The Hurt Business are the new Raw Tag Team Champions. Bobby Lashley greets the new champions by the entrance ramp, congratulating them on their big win. It's also cool to note this is Shelton's 3rd tag team title win, his last actually being all the way back in July of 2003. Backstage, Intercontinental Champion Sami Zayn confronts Kayla Braxton and asks if she's the person who leaked the audio of his backstage rant on SmackDown. Braxton tells Zayn a journalist doesn't reveal her sources, frustrating Zayn. And maybe it was Dave Meltzer. Next up, it's women's tag team action, as it's a tag team championship match between champions Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler and Raw Women's Champion Asuka, who's then joined by the return of Charlotte Flair. Yeah, the Queen shocks the Thunderdome as she makes her way to the ring, teaming up with the Empress of Tomorrow. Flair is looking for payback on Jax for putting her out of action, but she's also looking for a tag team gold and gets it when she counters Baszler's Kirifuda clutch attempt and hits the natural selection with the Queen trumping the Queen of Spades. Asuka and Charlotte Flair are the new women's tag team champions. Backstage, R-Truth and Biggie are laughing it up when Sami Zayn shows up and asks Biggie if he's the one who leaked Sami's backstage rant. The two almost get into a dust-up, and then it's confirmed that the two will have a championship match on this week's SmackDown. Next up, it's a TLC match for the Universal Championship as champion Roman Reigns, who's with Paul Heyman, takes on Kevin Owens. And the match gets off to an exciting start as Owens attacks Reigns out of nowhere, taking the fight to the champion. Jey Uso runs in to help, but KO attacks him as well, placing Jey's ankle in a chair and Pillmanizing it. As the referees help KO to the back, Reigns ambushes KO, regaining the momentum. Reigns and Owens put each other through the ringer, but somehow Owens stays in the match. Every time KO is close to reaching the title, Jey Uso returns, but ultimately a low blow and a guillotine by Reigns gives him enough of an advantage to secure the championship belt. Roman Reigns retains the Universal Championship. And finally, it's now time for the main event, the Firefly Inferno match between Randy Orton versus The Fiend. Now the rules are simple, the only way to win is to light a part of your opponent on fire. Anything goes, and that's what happens as The Fiend and Orton beat each other with everything from the ring steps to the leather straps to chains to even flipping Minecraft pickaxes. The Fiend locks the Legend Killer and the Mandible Claw near the flames, but a cagey Orton somehow pushes The Fiend back into the flames at ringside, lighting him up and winning the match. After the match, The Fiend is on fire and charges into the ring after Orton, only for the Viper to deliver an RKO out of nowhere. Yeah, The Fiend's still on fire at this point, but then Randy goes too far. He grabs a can of gasoline and sets The Fiend on fire as the show ends. Whew, wow, what a way to end 2020. But how did it fare up? Well, let's have a look at the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. As always, we start off with the good as number 1, nobody does it better. And there are a number of areas where the WWE needs to improve, but when it comes to producing hype videos, the case can be made that nobody does it better, whether it's Hollywood or professional sports leagues such as the NFL. Hype videos may seem like a small part of a show, but they can build interest in a match and bring new viewers or lapsed fans up to speed on the storylines behind the matches. Number 2, a strong showcase of stars. TLC's pre-show provided a strong showcase of 8 SmackDown stars, and despite the match's relatively short length, 8 minutes, it managed to highlight all 8 superstars while forwarding the story of Chad Gable coaching Otis, as well as Big E's pending program with Sami Zayn. Yeah, this is obviously a hastily thrown together match, and we're not going to complain about having 8 stars on the pre-show, but it served its purpose and gave 8 superstars a pay-per-view bonus to boot, right near Christmas. Number 3, a terrific TLC. Tonight's TLC match was a fantastic way to open what turned out to be an excellent show. Once again, Drew McIntyre proved he's a versatile champion who can not only work with a variety of different opponents, but someone who can work in speciality matches, whether it's Hell in a Cell or TLC. Obviously, AJ deserves credit for making this match a standout, as his ability to play human pinball was perfectly utilized. The suspense of whether The Miz could successfully pull off his Money in the Bank cash-in only added to the match's excitement. But we'll get onto that later. Number 4, the return of the Queen. After months of teases that she was on her way back, Charlotte Flair returned to Raw, not only teaming up with Asuka to win the Women's Tag Team Championship, not only getting revenge on Nia Jax for taking her out of action, but also becoming the WWE's 4th Women's Grand Slam champion. If you're going to book a superstar's comeback, it's difficult to think of a much better way to do so than what WWE did tonight with Charlotte. With Charlotte undoubtedly wanting to get the Raw Women's Championship around her waist, Asuka will want to keep a close eye on her tag team partner or risk getting stabbed in the back. Number 5. Business is good. The Hurt Business are riding high after tonight's win over the New Day. Now that Cedric Alexander and Shelton Benjamin have won the Raw Tag Team Championship, MVP's faction has 2 major championships, including Bobby Lashley's US Championship, quite the achievement for a group that's only been together since Cedric joined the group in September. Hopefully they won't split them up anytime soon, as they're one of the few good things going on Raw. The Hurt Business have quickly become one of the WWE's better factions in recent memory, something they could have done with Retribution if it spent any time working on the group's storyline, an angle with considerable potential. Number 6, a brutal bout. Roman Reigns vs KO was a fantastic TLC match, and a reminder you can have the same 2 types of stipulation matches but book them in separate but equally entertaining ways. It was brutal as you can imagine and helped get Owens over as a babyface with the heart of a champion, even if he didn't become a champion. And a fantastic finish. Who would have thought an Inferno match could be so entertaining? The WWE showdown between Randy Orton and The Fiend has been one of the best finishes ever, as Orton seemed about to lose the match when he turned the tables on The Fiend, getting his win. This ending was the right way to show the Viper outthinking his opponent and somehow surviving what should have been his last match. Even better will be the subsequent rematch. Or is there ever going to be a rematch? That was the good. What about the bad is number 1, another failed cash-in. The WWE's Money in the Bank concept is a great one on paper, but the number of failed cash-ins over the last 4 years has turned what used to be an exciting moment into a predictable one. Consider that 3 of the last 4 years men's winners have failed their attempts to cash in. Add in the fact that The Miz acquired the briefcase only after Otis put the match on the line, and this year's briefcase situation was more disappointing. What the hell was the point in taking the briefcase off Otis in the first place if he wasn't even gonna win the damn thing? Just no booking sense at all. Number 2, Mella's moment has passed. And for whatever reason, the WWE decided to pick Carmella against Sasha Banks for the SmackDown Women's Championship, and while this was Carmella's best match yet, it's time to send her back to the mid-card so she can work on her act some more, perhaps working alongside a veteran like Natalya in a tag team. To be honest, it's clear she's had her 15 minutes. Number 3, is Roman really a monster heel? As action-packed as the Roman Reigns-Kevin Owens TLC match was, it brought up a serious problem with Reigns' booking as a monster heel. If the Tribal Chief is such a badass, why has he struggled against opponents such as Jey Uso and Kevin Owens? While it's good for a heel to show some sort of weakness, having Reigns rely on low blows in what seems like every match not only makes him look weak, but makes his opponent look stupid for not being ready for such a contingency by wearing a protective cup. Reigns also relies on Jey Uso far too much in his matches, as seen tonight when Jey repeatedly stopped Owens from reaching the title, as well as at Survivor Series where he helped Reigns out against Drew. We're not saying that Reigns needs to be booked like Brock Lesnar, but it's sloppy storytelling to have him win his matches the same way every show. It also takes a little bit out of Reigns being unstoppable. It's like he needs the help every time. And number 4, is The Fiend dead? As we discussed in our predictions video earlier this week, the Inferno match was a good way to give Randy Orton a win without pinning or submitting The Fiend. However, the finish of Orton dousing The Fiend in gasoline and turning him into a human torch is another reminder of how the WWE can paint itself into a corner by over-the-top finishes like this. It's obvious The Fiend will return, but if he can be set on fire and survive, how is anyone ever going to defeat him unless he's Bill Goldberg and the match is in Saudi Arabia? Some fans rolled their eyes when Bray Wyatt was locked in a container, set ablaze and emerged as The Fiend. WWE is walking on thin ice as it stretches the fans' willingness to suspend their disbelief. Now, there was nothing downright ugly about tonight's show, as the WWE over-delivered its last pay-per-view of the year, with good matches from start to finish, some memorable moments, and even advancements in storylines, something fans don't normally see at the end of the year. And we have to admit, we weren't expecting that ending. I thought The Fiend was just gonna get his arm on fire and then run off. Kinda like Kane did in the first Inferno match. But setting the whole man on fire? WWE. But there you have it, guys. WrestleLamia's recap of 2020's TLC event, including the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. What did you think of tonight's show? Is The Fiend really dead? Be sure to leave your comments down below, subscribe if you haven't already, follow us on Instagram and Facebook for exclusive lists, and I'll see you next time with some more wrestling content.